Hello Year 5, welcome to your second geography lesson on our topic all about mountains. So today we're going to be looking at what mountains we have in the UK, but before we do that we're going to have a look and recap of using our map reading skills so we know how to identify mountain ranges or hills within a map. So this is going to be a little bit of a recap on map skills that you might have done in previous year groups. So I'm going to move my beautiful little face so you can read this. So here we have a hill, okay? Now we can see when we look at a hill how tall it is. We can see that it's a hill because we can see how far off the ground it is, okay? But to look at our keywords here, we need to look at identifying how we'd be able to locate this on a map, okay? So the two keywords that we're looking at for this lesson is we have the relief. So relief is the difference between the highest and the lowest height of the area. So we would have the lowest part of the hill here that would be measured, and we would have the highest point. And we'll have a look at what that looks like on a map a little bit further on in this lesson. We're then going to be having a look at the keyword topography, okay? So this is the surface features of the earth, like hills, mountains, or valleys. And this is how they are represented on a map, okay? So there are three different ways of being able to show the height of something on a map. Okay, so first of all we have layer shading. So the areas of different heights are shown using different colours, and usually there will be a key that matches those colours so that you can identify the different heights. Now heights are usually shown in metres above sea level, so how far off the ground they are from the sea level. So if we have a look here, this is what the side view would look like if we were looking at a hill. So we would be able to see the different levels starting from the lowest of metres to the highest metres. However, we can't see that on a 2D map. So the way it's shown on a 2D map here was by looking at the key. So each of the colours represents the different highest points of our hill. So here we can see that the green bits here around the bottom means that they are less than 100 metres off the sea level. The yellow ones, it's getting slightly higher, between 100 and 200 metres. Then we hit 200 to 300 metres, and then anything more than 300 metres. So using these colours, that tells us that the area here in the middle is going to be the highest point of our hill. So here's a question for you. What is the height of the land of A, B, and C? So pause the video. Do you think you can tell me the answers to those questions? Okay, so A is less than 100 metres, okay, using our key. B is 200 to 300 metres, and C is more than 300 metres, okay? So we can see that C is going to be the highest point on our map, okay? So this is what it would look like on a map. So this is to put it into perspective for you. So here you can see the green areas here are going to be very flat land. Okay, there's going to be no height to them at all. We then start to get into the lighter green areas, and as we shade through the lighter areas, we start to see a brown, maybe slight beige colour that starts to appear. So this is starting to tell us that we're starting to hit slightly higher ground. Now, as you can see here, all along here, as we start to go through the light brown areas, we start to see these darker brown areas. And if we look all the way up here into the Highlands, into the Scottish mountains, we can see some extremely dark brown areas. Now here, if we have a look at our key colour here helps us identify how far off the ground they are. So anything here in dark green, this is going to be at 0 to 50 metres above sea level. As we start to hit these palish yellow areas here, we're talking between 200 to 400 metres above ground level. Then we start to go into our slightly darker areas, which is hitting 400 to 600, and anything beyond that is reaching up to 800 metres. Now, when we start to see areas here that have covered in very, very tiny bits of white that you can see, we're hitting mountains of up to 1,000 to 1,400 metres off the ground level, okay? So this is what we call layer shading. So this is often used on maps, which are very large areas. If we're looking at countries or possibly even continents, this is the way that they would be shown up on a map, because it makes it easier to be able to identify. And it also gives a good overview of the relief of that area. So we can see as we start to hit the Scottish Isles all the way up here in the mountains, the majority of the land that is part of Scotland is very, very mountainous. As we reach down further here to the south and to the southeast, we're not looking at too many mountain ranges in that area. Now obviously the larger areas are going to be drawn and painted or coloured in a very, very dark brown, and obviously the flatter areas would be in green. So looking at that, to answer that question of how would we describe the relief of the UK, well, we've already pointed out that anywhere further down here to the south Okay, the south and the southwest have various mountain ranges on here, but in comparison to the east coast, we have very, very flat land. We have a big strip that goes right the way up the middle, which we will look at a little bit later in this lesson. But obviously the majority of Scotland and even Ireland over here and Wales are very mountainous areas of our country. Now, the second way of looking at this is to spot the heights. So sometimes you might have numbers. Okay, now these numbers show you the certain heights in meters of points on that certain hill. So here on this hill, this part is only up about 10 meters. Then we start to go up to about 30 meters this side, 40 meters on this side, and then we start peaking from 100 to 190 all the way up to 240. Now this is what it would look like as a side view, and here this is what it would look like as a flat view. So if I knew that I was going to be here on my mountain and I knew I was going to walk in the direction to the east, I know that I'm going to have a slight incline here because I'm starting to reach at 100 meters above sea level. However, if I walked in this direction, here I know that it's going to be less of a steep climb because it's only 40 meters above sea level. However, there is a blue triangle in the middle of my map view. So I'm curious, what do you think that blue triangle might represent? So the blue triangle represents a triangulation pillar or a trig point. Now we looked at trig points a little bit in our geography lesson for last week. So these are concrete pillars that were built around in the 1930s, and it helps people who design maps to make it more accurate to pinpoint certain locations. Now there are over 6,500 that were built, and there are many that remain today. So if you've ever climbed up a mountain or up a hill, you'll be able to see these at the tops where the peaks are. Now, some of these triangulation pillars actually have compass bearings. So if we have a look a little bit more closely at this one, this trig point here has compass points in it. And it tells you, if you look very closely, what direction they're pointing as to what you might find if you were to walk in that direction. Okay, so not only does it show the direction, but it shows the distance to those different places as well from that point right at the top of that peak. So the third way to show maps and hills on a mountain, mountains and hills on a map, there we go, I'll get my words out eventually, is looking at contour lines. So contour lines are usually shown on a map which join up places of the same height. Okay, so everywhere along one specific contour line is the same height. So here on the side view, all the way around where this wiggly line would go all the way around, okay, shows that anywhere on that line that you're walking will be 100 meters above sea level. Now you'll notice that it doesn't go around in a perfect circle, and if you were to look at an ordnance survey map or maps that have these contour lines on, you'll see that they go wiggly and they move all the way around, and they don't have the same distance between them. That is because it shows an accurate representation of the different heights as you work yourself up the hills or the mountains. Now these contour lines will usually show up on maps as being a brown or an orange colour, and as they get closer and closer and closer, that suggests that that hill is getting steeper and steeper. So the further apart they are, the less steep they are between each line. The closer those contour lines are together shows how much steeper each part of that hill is. Now the contour interval is the difference between the height. So here this line here represents this mountain or hill at being 100 meters, and this line here represents it at 200, and this line here at 300. Okay, so here on this map specifically, it's showing the interval as being 100 meters. So it's always important to make sure you read keys that are given to you on a map as well. So here is an example of how I mean that those wiggly lines will get closer and further apart, okay? So here we can see we are going up in hundreds. Now here from point A all the way up to point B, we can see the different wiggly lines. So here, the lines are further apart, which means from here being 900 and to this one being 1,000, if I was to walk from this point to this line, it's going to take me, it's not going to be very, very steep. But if I was to go from this point to this point, that's going to be 100 meters difference in a very, very short space of time. So that part of the hill is going to be a lot steeper than climbing it from that part of the hill. Okay, so my question to you is, what is the height of the land at the different points of A, B, C and D? Can you pause the video and see if you can jot down the answers? Okay, so A is going to be at 900 meters. Okay, so if you follow the line across, you'll know that it hits at 900. Now B is going to be at 1,300, so it's just on that line of where the 1,300 meters hits. Now C is going to be that inside one. So anything with inside that line is going to be at its highest point. Now, obviously, that highest point is going to be flat because at nowhere else does it tell me that anything gets any higher within that part. So that's going to be a flat piece of land at 1,600 meters. And the last one here is going to be D. Now, D doesn't specify that it's exactly 100 meters in either direction, but it's because it's between the 900 and the 1,000 meter line, that roughly tells me that's going to be around 950 meters.